advantage after or during a difficult separation, divorce, custody battle, or co-parenting situation is financially. And one of the most common ways we see this happening is through taxes. So today's guest, I'm so happy to have back, is someone who knows a lot about this and I'm sure can give you a number of answers on how to deal with it properly. So welcome, Nancy, and please introduce yourself and what you do, because we've sent so many people over to you in the past few years.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you so much for having me back. My name is Nancy Rosner. I'm an attorney and the executive director of the Community Tax Law Project. We are a low-income taxpayer clinic located in Richmond, Virginia, and helping low-income Virginians with tax issues. We're part of a national program, so there are clinics in almost every state across the nation. And our goal is to provide free legal services to folks that have issues either with the IRS or with their state taxing agencies.
And for someone to ask a question to get this legal service, which is so valuable and necessary, they don't need to fill out a whole form before they ask a question, right? They could just get a hold of one of these
Yeah,
clinics.
so not at our clinic. I'm not sure other clinics may have different processes for intakes, but we do provide legal advice in addition to legal representation. So it doesn't mean that we have to take you on as a client or it has to be a full blown legal dispute for us to be able to research the issue and provide advice. And there is an IRS publication that has a list of all of the clinics that are currently being federally funded across the nation. And so that's IRS publication 4134. So if you just do a quick Google search, you can pull that up and it's organized by state. And you can see if there's any clinics in your state or near your state that you could reach out to with income tax questions.
Right. And I know that many states have more than one clinic, because I think we talked about California having something like 13 clinics.
We have a lot. Yeah, it's a big state and a lot of population there. So
Yeah.
states like California, New York have multiple clinics in order to help support just the volume of people there that qualify for their services.
Oh, so helpful. Well, I'm thrilled that that has not changed since the last time we talked. So we're gonna continue sending people over to these clinics, especially because where can you get free legal advice about money, which again is present in 99% of the relationships of the community that we're dealing with. So
Right.
let's talk about, Nancy, what are some of the most common ways that you see abusers using taxes to inflict further abuse on their victims, especially post separation?
There's definitely a few main ways, and some of which, unfortunately, folks are probably pretty familiar with. So, the other spouse filing a tax return and claiming the kids um, when they're not entitled to, claiming the kids as dependents or for other credits. And if they do so and they're the first ones to file, it actually prevents the other spouse, the rightful claimer of the children and the credits, from being able to claim them and file electronically. So the return gets rejected. It forces the second filer to file by paper, which IRS processing times are still pretty lengthy when it comes to processing tax returns by paper. And if the IRS is seeing multiple tax returns claiming the same children or even the same, other dependents, it sends up a red flag for the IRS. So they may audit the tax return. They may require additional paperwork and documents before they'd be willing to release any refund that's due. So that's definitely one of the main ways. And we see that not just with the children, but with um, also the survivor's information. So whether that's claiming a survivor still is filing jointly, and that prevents them from going forth and being able to file their own separate tax return, claiming them as a dependent, which also causes issues for them when they try to go to file. Um, and just generally using their information without their permission when it comes to taxes. So that's definitely a tactic that we see that can wreak a lot of havoc and that can cause quite some time to resolve, which is unfortunate.
I think when these things happen, especially with the people that we talk to, they assume there's nothing they can do about it. Like, my ex did this
Right.
and I'm stuck. Is that
Right.
is that true?
It's not true. I'm happy to say that's not true. So usually our first recommendation there is if you try to file electronically and it's rejected because your social or one of your children's or dependent social security numbers was already used. So it is supposed to give you a rejection code when you file electronically if it's rejected. Um, File by paper. So print out the tax return, sign and date it. Try to send it certified if you can, just so you have tracking information to show exactly when you submitted it, to show that it was, filed on time or when it was filed. Um, and then wait to hear from the IRS. So IRS should follow up at some point, either with the refund or with a letter saying, we need more information. They might mention someone else already used your information on a return, or we received other information regarding dependents on your return. And that's a great time to get a clinic involved. So reaching out to them, providing a copy of the notice you received so they can see what's going on, and a copy of the tax return. So it's really important to keep records. And I know sometimes that's hard when maybe your living situation isn't stable or you feel like you don't have a great place to keep those records safely. But if possible, it is important to try to keep copies of what you have, because it's going to be able to help the attorney to assist you in hopefully resolving those outstanding issues.
Great. So people should hear that just because this has happened to you and it is really, really common, that you shouldn't just give up and feel like a victim, that you should pursue finding out what rights you have. And especially with something like these tax clinics, you can get free legal advice on what to do, even if they don't take your case, but just to at least start being pointed in the right direction on how to get
Right.
the relief that you hopefully are entitled to.
Right. And just to learn more about your rights and how to better protect yourself, maybe next year, trying to file earlier, file as soon as you have all of your tax records. That way, hopefully, if you're the first to file, you're not going to run into issues with someone else claiming you or claiming your dependents that then prevents you from being able to go on and file.
Yeah. Okay. So, what other options do victims have to protect themselves or find relief regarding tax situations?
So I do want to mention just some resources. The IRS has some different programs to try to combat against what they consider identity theft. And a lot of times, if it's between two spouses, the IRS says, well, it's not really identity theft, it's a civil issue. But I think there are some arguments that can be made there, especially if there is domestic violence, if there's protective orders. It's not sort of this standard, separation that the IRS may, sort of categorize it as. So there's the Identity Protection PIN program, or the IP PIN program, where survivors can sign up with the IRS to be enrolled in this program, where you're assigned a PIN number that you then must use when you file your tax return electronically. Otherwise, the return won't be accepted. So the benefit to the survivor there is that if someone else tries to use your information to file, the return's going to get rejected because it's not going to have your specific PIN. So
That's amazing.
yes. I do want to sort of
Wow.
give some caveats with that program. So the IRS assigns a new number every year at the beginning of the year, generally end of the year, beginning of the filing season. And it's a new number every year. So what that means is you have to have your address updated with the IRS to your current address, because if you are moving around or you don't have a stable address, that information could be going, to an address where you're not located, or you might have difficulty receiving or accessing that information. And then that might cause problems for you if you're trying to go and file your tax return. There are ways to retrieve the IP PIN, which is sort of the shorthand for that special PIN number. And that's by going online. So you can create an IRS online account and access not just your IP PIN, but there's a lot of information about your tax account that is available online through the IRS website. I think the challenge there is that the IRS is now using a company or a program called ID.gov. me, which does require you to verify your identity before signing up. So usually you need a photo identification. You may need sort of a stable address to provide, because there are certain steps that you have to pass in order for them to say, okay, we feel confident that we've verified that this person is who they say they are. Um, because there is so much identity theft, IRS has to be really, really careful about, who they're signing up and where they're sending information. So I know that sometimes that can be a barrier for folks, if they're not able to, create an online account. It is possible to request that special PIN number without having an IRS online account. It's just, if you don't retrieve the mail, if you're not able to get to it, you can get that number. They're usually not going to give it to you over the phone, but it is possible to get that online.
So to register for a program like that, you said survivors, like what kind of proof would someone need to say, I am a victim of domestic violence?
So it's actually not strictly for survivors. It's for all taxpayers, because of just the rise in identity theft and tax related scams. IRS said, we need to figure out a way to combat some of this and protect, taxpayers and their information. So it's actually open to all taxpayers. So you don't have to be a survivor. You don't have to provide any sort of proof that you're a survivor to enroll in the program. But do understand, that they do change the number every year, and they will send that information out at the beginning of the year to the address of record. And then also currently there's no way to unenroll. So once you've enrolled, you're kind of locked into the program. But I think it benefits a lot of people, and it is able to help you protect your information when it comes to taxes and filing your tax return.
It sounds like such a heightened level of security.
Yes, yes. And, IRS is constantly trying to find new ways. I mean, I think sometimes it does create a barrier to access, because they are trying so hard to protect information. And I think they have to weigh, providing easy access, but also protecting, taxpayer information, because, once your social security number's out there, your date of birth's out there, there's a lot that scammers can do with that information, unfortunately. And sort of speaking to that, a survivor leaving an abusive relationship, if the abuser has some of that information, there are things they can do with that other than taxes. We've had clients where the abusers opened up a business using their social security number, and that causes tax problems and other problems, or going and taking out loans using their information, and that can cause other problems. So what we recommend, in addition to utilizing options like the IP PIN program, is getting your credit report every year. So, we're not at all associated with this program, but if you go to www.annualcreditreport.com, you're actually entitled to 3 free credit reports per year from the major credit reporting agencies. So I think it's like Expedia, TransUnion, and maybe Experian. Again, I'm not endorsing, or we're not associated with it, but we do give that to our clients as an option, because you can either, I guess, use all 3 at once, or maybe you could sort of space it out over the year, so that every few months you're pulling your credit report and you're identifying if there's anything weird showing up on it, or anything, that you need to look into to just sort of better protect yourself and your financial well-being.
Yeah, super helpful. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I gotta watch this later. Like, take care of stuff for myself, just to be safer and have that more security. Okay, so you had talked about also like liability. Is there protections from liability?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess I talked a lot about sort of abusers using your information separately, but what happens if you filed jointly with them, whether you meant to or not? So we've definitely had clients that felt, okay, I have no other option. I don't want to start an argument. I don't want to start, something that's, could turn serious by questioning financial decisions that the other spouse is making. So I'm just going to sign the tax return. Not going to question it. I'm just going to sign the tax return. Well, there's situations where the return, either has a balance due when you file it and maybe you don't realize it. But I think more often we're seeing situations where there's issues on the return that the survivor's not aware of, whether it's, income being left off or inflated deductions. And what that does, it ends up in IRS auditing or examining the tax return, and boom, there's a whole new tax amount due. And I think what folks may not realize is if you're filing jointly, even if you're, let's say, a stay at home parent with minimal or no income, if you're filing jointly, you're saying to the IRS, hey, I'm agreeing to be held responsible for this debt. What both spouses are saying that. So if you're sort of,
Guys, I'm sorry, pause for just a second. Something did happen and the recording was interrupted. I'm not exactly sure where that was. I think it might have been about 2 minutes ago.
Oh
So
no.
I apologize for that. But yeah, it stopped happening. I'm not sure why. So Lisa, if maybe
okay,
you can go back like 2 questions, I really apologize.
Two
And we'll
questions.
just start the way we did. We can stitch it together later. It's not like the whole thing is lost, but if you could just go back a few minutes, and we'll deal with it on our side. I
Oh,
apologize, Nancy.
okay. Okay.
Okay.
Ah, that was so good.
I
All right.
wonder
Yeah,
where we were.
I know.
yeah.
Okay. Well, what I'll do is because Nancy, you had started talking about something else that from another question, and I thought I'll just ask officially, like, what are some other forms of financial abuse that you have seen, uh, in your work?